Hey everybody, I'm Dakeem Lyles and welcome back to another episode of Casting Directors Say What, where each month I spotlight an amazing casting director in the industry. Because a lot of what we do is misunderstood, I hope that this series can shine a light on all the wonderful, hardworking casting directors out there that really help bring other people's dreams and realities to life. That's what we do, everybody. And today, of course, I have another amazing special guest that I'm so happy to introduce to you guys and hear her story and chat with you about the casting industry. Tell us your name.
Robin Carus.
Hey, Robin. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you. I really appreciate you giving me your time this week. And let's just get right into it. How
Yes.
did you get started in casting?
Okay. For those that don't know, I actually was brought up around the business. My aunt is also a casting director. Her
Ooh.
name is Terry Burland.
Hey.
So she does primarily commercial casting. And though I did not grow up in New York or Los Angeles, where she currently is, I when I was younger, I would come into the city and I would watch her work. At the
Mhm.
time, she was a casting director for BBD&O and also for Young and Rubicam. And I grew up watching her work and I loved it. And I grew up before the age of IMDb and IBDB and all the DBs and all of that stuff. And I really I loved what she did. She
Mhm.
was a connector and she was always going to theater and doing something beautiful and cultural and interesting. And I just said at a really young age, 6 to be exact,
Wow.
I yeah, I want to do what you do. Now, at 6, I didn't truly know. And the interesting thing is too, when you're a kid and you watch television, I thought there was one time where I was in the city and I was in her office where she still had on her desk like an old-fashioned Rolodex.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yes, so I I turned the little knob to where the S's were for SAG and before SAG was SAG AFTRA and I called them and asked the union if I could get the contact information for David Cassidy, who I thought would be a really cool addition to our lunch. My aunt walks in and said, "What are you doing?" And so a young casting
David
director.
Cassidy's number, please. Thanks. I'll hold.
Now, I don't know what was dumber, the fact that SAG like let a 6-year-old or 7-year-old like call them, or that they didn't pick up on the fact that there was someone who was like a child asking for information. I don't know. But, and I think as the years progressed, I I just I knew that whereas my aunt had made a really wonderful dent slash focus in the commercial world, I knew I loved theater. And so when I was in college, like many people who are in college, I studied theater and for maybe a hot second, I said, I'll act. And I didn't, because I kept coming back to casting. And so then computers were really becoming a thing.
Yeah.
And I had a friend um, who basically was hook. There was a program in LA, I think it was called Mastercaster, and here it was called Starcaster. And he was hooking up agents, casting directors via the computer and the now new World Wide Web. This is the 90s.
Uh,
And so he would go into these offices, and as they were schmoozing with him, and he would always make mention of me, and it was the nicest thing. And he said, I have this friend, she wants to be casting director, we went to school together. And he really was sort of like my agent. And who knew he would sort of be the agent for me getting my job. And so the very first so sight unseen, there was a casting office called Just Voices. uh,
I know the references.
yes, and that was my very very first professional job in the city as an assistant. And so, but they hired me, God bless, sight unseen. And 2 days after I graduated, I packed my bags and I moved to New York. And I I was in school in Massachusetts and I couldn't believe it. And they had me at the time fax, because we faxed,
Right.
um
Fax
So
machines. Those are the days.
yeah, so I faxed my resume to them a half a million times, and finally they said we would love you. And I think they liked my enthusiasm and the fact that this kid from Massachusetts, or who was going to school in Massachusetts, was willing to do just about anything. And I think we had like two phone conversations, and that was it. And I don't know, the rest was sort of history. And then from there, I just sort of worked my way up and around in the business. I left another commercial casting office, and I knew I had to find my bliss. I knew I still wanted to remain in casting,
Mhm.
but I didn't think that it was I was meant to solely work in the commercial space of things.
Yeah.
And so I left and I did a very irresponsible thing, and kind of
Thought
went.
at the time, maybe.
At the time it was irresponsible, but for me and for my to figure out my life, it was good.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, while I was at the other office, I had an interview for TheaterWorks USA.
Right.
And so TheaterWorks gives a lot of people their equity cards, and so the artistic director said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Cast and be happy. I don't know." And 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 so she loved my resume, which was at the time, because we had paper resumes, it was on green vellum paper with a really good font. And so
Nice cardstock.
Mhm. So she loved the girl with the green vellum paper resume. And she also knew I had other colors because I had sent a bunch to her.
Already, already.
Like I had the rainbow of vellum. And so, and so, okay. So so the artistic director says to me, you're a little too young, but meanwhile, kept my resume.
Mm.
And 9 months later, from that fateful interview, I get a phone call from that company again saying, "We have a casting director who is looking for an associate," or maybe it was a year later, something like that. And so, but they're looking for an associate. Would you be interested? Well, I was young and hungry and I wanted in. And now this was my in into the theater world, which I really wanted to do.
Mhm.
So I went in. The casting director, who I liken to the cartoon character Daria, who
Oh
only
God.
she
Hi,
only
I help you. Come on in.
yes, she was she literally looked at my resume. She's like, "So you want to be in casting?" And I'm like, "Ah." And so she loved my sense of panic and that I was so animated compared to her. And she knew that literally everything she was saying to me, she could read it in my face that I was a little freaking out over.
Uh-huh.
And so, but she loved that, I didn't realize that was her personality. She fed on that.
Mhm.
And so she's looking down my resume, and very similarly to the actors, she said, "So, Terry Burland, that's the aunt." She
Mhm.
said, "You worked for her. Do you like her?" And I was like, oh my gosh, it was my lightning bolt moment. Like either I would say yes and she hated her,
Right.
or, you know, and so I said, "Oh, I love her." And she's like, "Great. Well, the conversation can," and she goes, "Oh, Terry." And so I, the side story to this is that Margaret actually worked for my aunt at some point. She was in Los Angeles, worked for her, and she remembered that she started to kind of figure out that though we didn't look alike or sound alike,
Uh,
Terry had this niece
uh,
who was pursuing, casting. So I happened to open up my notebook, and I have a very parochial school like handwriting where it's all like in capitals and in the same font and little and typewritery.
uh-huh.
So she remembered what my handwriting was because my aunt would bring back her when she was doing commercial workshops and she would put up cue cards for her students. She would
Mhm.
have me write out
Write them
everything.
out.
Mhm. So I had
I
because I
remember those. I remember having to write out those cue cards
yes. So
in
any
all caps so that when the actors are standing far away from it and doing stuff, they can still see it.
correct, and you don't have to. think about like, oh my gosh, what was this lowercase letter that, I
Right.
know.
Right.
Uh, So anyway, so she remembers my handwriting, sees my handwriting in the notebook, makes the correlation, and actually leaves the interview flat. And so only to laugh. That's what she does.
Wow.
Also, she came to my interview in pajamas. So quirky. Anyway, life in the theater.
Yeah.
So anyway, so meanwhile, as I'm waiting for her to come back, Barbara Pasternak, the artistic director, she says, if Margaret loves you, just know I love you.
Oh.
And so sure enough, Margaret comes in. She's like, "So Terry's your aunt." And I said, "Yes." So she said, "You're hired." And then 9 months later, Margaret says to me, "I'm leaving and we'd like you to take over." And that's really how I became a casting director. And from there, my journey began. And I was at TheaterWorks for 9 years until I started my own thing. And as you know, you're nothing without good people in your life. When you say, I got to throw in the towel, this maybe I should have become like a teacher, or maybe I should have, I don't know, maybe I should go back to school for something.
All that artist self-doubt that always is hanging over us.
Yes. And for each time that I kind of did that to myself, somebody somewhere came through the woodwork and said, this is what happened, and this was because of our interaction. And
Yes, and then it inspires you, right? And it's also like things that you do. I can't tell you how many times actors come up to me and I'm like, I've seen them in something now, and I'm like, oh, congratulations. And they're like, yeah, remember you put me in my first commercial? And I'm like, I don't remember, but they were like, thank you. And it was so comfortable in the room. And then all that self-doubt that you have, it's just like that spark comes right back, and you're like, oh, I am making a difference in people's lives. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I do casting, and I think a lot of us get in it for many reasons. But the one thing that keeps us in it is those success stories. And when we hear those people say, you don't know how much you changed my life. And you're like, really? Because I didn't even think I was.
even when it comes to uh, the creation of someone new, loving the art of what we do, I was at my brother's, and he has nothing to do with the entertainment industry whatsoever. One of his friends walks in, and at some point, sometime, I must have had a conversation with him, a few, but I don't remember because it's a number of years ago. And how many conversations do you have? And he wanted to know what it was like to be a casting director and how to get into things, etc. And so it turns out now he works for like a film company. And he said, I never would have had the courage to do this had I not talked with you. And I really liked that because somebody heard him. And I think that we're in the business of hearing people, not just looking at them, but we hear them, we see them, we recognize them, and we hopefully acknowledge them the way that they feel that they should be acknowledged. And when that happens, it makes you feel like $1 million. Like nothing could beat it.
Yeah, and you kind of answered my next question, which was is what is it about casting side of the industry that you love? And it's just that, the interaction, the stories, from the people that we meet, and also just watching people's success stories, especially when you see them put in the work, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, my next question to you is, a lot has changed and really fast for us, especially in this industry. That pandemic hit and it was like somebody flipped a light switch, right? And then they flicked it back on and then they flipped it back off for the strike, right? And they're like, oh my God, how much more can we take? So, really, I hope this is helpful to people because I would love to get what is your perspective on like the current state of the casting industry now, and what do you think actors should understand about it going forward now? Because, like you said, all those stories that you told, it was just such a different era when we started. And it was so much easier to make connections now. And now, because we're all off in our spaces, you can't just fax somebody or walk into an office and drop your email or your headshot and stuff. So, what's your perspective on the current state of casting right now?
Okay, so it's filled with hills and dales, if you will. I
Roller
think,
coaster right now. Hold
yeah.
on.
So I think that first of all, a lot of people say, I want to be on your radar, and that's great. But it seems to me that on your radar really is when the project happens, then you send your headshot and resume with your note.
Right.
Because the idea of on your radar, we used to have huge offices where we could have a whole shelving unit dedicated to headshots and resumes that we would look through. And now
Come
everything,
in. Can I drop my headshot and resume off of this? Sure, put it over there. And then we'd see you and be like, you know what? You look like you might be right for this job. Go sign in on Studio 3, you know?
yeah, exactly. And now that's not it. And the idea that are you on video all the time? Yes. And uh and is it frustrating? Well, sometimes that not having that personal interaction is also frustrating for us too, because do we want to see you and work with you in person and see how you take direction? Yes, we do. It's not simply you're at home and you, when I have the opportunity, and I don't know if you also do this, and I'm able to kind of redirect somebody because I feel like there is possibility and it's not a Zoom.
Potential. You see
Yeah,
something there.
then then you sort of have to say to your creative team and talk them through, let's give them direction and see if they can quickly retape themselves. And that way they're finding the perfect person because we would have done that in an in-person audition. Now we cannot.
Oh, we
And
can.
um, so I really feel that I really feel that the we are still striving for connection and it's taken a different form. And I think that when people have the opportunity to have those meet and greets where you can meet with someone in person, you should, because we can't forget what our old selves were like. And we can't forget, it's not that we won't remember you at all. It's just that our way of socializing and our way of doing business has now altered and everything is on the computer. And and I think that if you have not all casting directors behave the same way. Some people are able to take meeting or want to take meetings on Zoom or even will have an in-person coffee. But it used to be that you would have like a general and
Yes.
and people
Right
would
in
come.
the office.
Yes. And so you'd rent a space and general and you'd see your 20 or 30 or 50 actors that day and that would be it. And now no, there's not that at all. And
No space
so
to do it, and people's are their time is so stretched out in different places now.
for me, when I'm working on an equity-based project, then I'm able to have an EPA and see people in person.
Mhm.
And the idea of that always is like, what? This is amazing.
Uh-huh.
And but obviously for anything that's on camera, well, we are restricted to these boxes that we're in right now, and whatever comes through on whatever form, be it your EcoCast or whatever, that's that's what you're dealing with. And so it's changed. And I will say that as technology has progressed, like do I miss the days of editing things like through the night? No. Um, that was awful. And I think younger actors have to realize what we went through so that
Did a
they
job once that kept me in the office with my partner, Freya Krasnow, till 5 in the morning.
I had the
We
same thing.
went home for a little bit and then came right back to the office a few hours later.
Yep. I had something where I was working until 5 in the morning, back at 8:30. I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
Um, and you would have to wait for a messenger to come, and that was
Or
scary
take
with
it there yourself.
yes. And sometimes you were going to really shifty neighborhoods and it was late and not as many people were outside. You're like, what is my life?
I remember one night, it was Halloween night, and I had just wrapped up a job that was supposed to end at like 5, and it was 7 o'clock at night, and I'm like leaving now on 23rd and like 6th Avenue, and like the streets were packed, and I still had to get to a messenger, which was on like 34th Street. And I was so angry. And I'm like, move out of here, Jason. Get out of here, Michael Myers. I got to drop something off. So it was crazy all the legwork we used to do, right?
Yes, yes. So we did so much and we still do a lot. And the interesting thing is, and do you feel sometimes like an ER doctor? Like, I think that the new nuance is that we should be available to people 24/7. So if they have a thought in their brain at like 1 in the morning, the expectation is that we'll be up to respond to our clients
Mhm.
and also to the actors. And that's not realistic, because the realistic thing is that we've got to be able to have our lives and sleep and, see our friends and go to dinner and, and yes, our work is a very important to us, but at what cost? And because we are not being paid doctor wages, uh, therefore therefore we need to breathe a little bit. And I think people don't realize that. And of course, for our clients, we want to be the best we can be, and we want to be the everything person for them.
Mhm.
But we also have to, we
We have to have a life. I always tell actors too, I was like, one of the most important things you can do as an artist, and especially as an actor, is go out and live. And by live, I mean it don't have anything to do with acting. You're just living life and getting perspective. So then when it's time for you to come back and pretend to make something real, you can use that real life perspective to ground
yeah.
your performance and make it real. It's so important to get out there and live so that you can have something to bring back to really ground your performances and stuff.
Yes,
Now,
yes.
what I know you talked about this briefly, but what kind of things are you casting now and do you normally cast?
I work on a lot of theater,
Mhm.
and every now and again, film, and sometimes commercials. And so it's a hodgepodge. And so I think that when I left commercials, I kind of left with the idea of, no, I'm not going to touch them again. And
Mhm.
then I realized absence makes the heart grow fonder. And I still wanted a little bit of that in my life, a little bit of that chaotic commercial
It
frenzy.
does, casting for commercials, I tell, just like for you and I, for actors too, you learn so much about the casting process because it's
Yes.
so fast.
It's quick, it's fast and furious. And even in this post-COVID era,
Mhm.
it still moves fast and furiously. And that's and really a lot of it is the waiting game from the client after
Yeah.
you're done. The casting can happen quickly,
Mhm.
but in terms of what the client has to say, that's and what their expectations are once they've given you some sort of answer, you
Yes.
know. So because they don't understand that now what we're doing is we're waiting by our computers for that confirmation that everyone's seen everything and accepts the terms. So
Yes. And that's great too. That's a great, I'm glad you brought that up because that leads me into what's one misunderstanding about being a casting director that kind of drives you crazy? Because there's so many things that people think about casting directors and what we do. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody talking about a film. They're like, that casting was awful. And I was like, yeah, like it was all us, right?
I think that people don't think that it's a collaborative process
Mhm.
and that it's not simply us. I think that we suggest, we obviously we hold casting sessions. Sometimes we're making attachments
Yeah.
to projects, but it's a collaborative process. We are not the sole decision makers, and I think they think it's all on us. No, we are a vessel for our creative teams. We are the conduit between production and talent. And basically, I think that people have to remember, for us, it's a collaborative process. And let's see, I think that for years, you're either everyone's golden girl or golden boy or golden person, or they're like, no, how dare you? And we deal with that, and that's our neuroses. And I think that people don't realize that we do strive for a modicum of whatever perfect looks like in our casting world, I think people forget that we really strive for that. We also strive to make the process easy or
Yeah.
easy. And people forget, actors forget that they can ask questions. They have the right to ask questions. They don't. And when they don't ask questions, they don't get answers.
I
And
love that you just said that because I was just teaching a class this week where the students were talking about how, they get nervous and they don't know how to deal with the nerves when they get in the room. And I'm like, some of that nerve might just come from being unsure about something. And
yeah.
as casting directors, our jobs is to get the best performance out of you. Nobody is rooting for you more in the room than a casting director. So if you need to ask us questions to clarify stuff so that you can do what you need to do, please ask us. If this is your first time auditioning, I would like to know that. If you're really nervous, I would like to know that. If you don't understand something that I just explained to you, please tell me because I don't want to say action and get a bad performance out of you. I want you to shine bright like a diamond. How can I help you do that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that okay. So feedback is always a really touchy subject. Do you have a right to get feedback? Can you get feedback, etc.? Well, if you are dying to know, if it's a burning desire, then yes, ask for it. If we have time to give it, then we will absolutely give it because sometimes when we're casting something and people don't realize in our inboxes we have about, I don't know, 100 emails. Sometimes it's from the talent that are responding to us, agents and managers who are also responding and asking questions, and also from our producers and directors who are also trying to plan and collaborate with us.
Yeah.
So we really have to take care of our clients first. And then we are dealing with agents and managers, kind of, coinciding with all of that. But then to these individual requests, that's what we get to last. And people have to remember that we have to be able to figure out the business in order to give you the feedback. And so it's not that we don't want to, it's just that sometimes our time is taken. And
Yeah.
and and it's not bad, and it's not a slight. And let's say you want a follow-up, you can ask for that. You can say, hey, I don't know if you saw this, and then we say, oh man, sorry, here you go, you
Yeah.
know
But don't be afraid to ask questions. I love that. Like, also, too, my next question is what do you think new actors should be doing now to get started in the industry? Like, what realistic advice would you give an actor who just decided, I want to make this a career choice? Because making that decision when you and I were coming up as casting directors in the 2000s and the late 90s, and making that decision now in 2024 is a totally different thing.
Okay, so for newbies and for college students, and even people who are getting into the industry after maybe having a first career, and this is their second leg of life, if you will,
Mhm.
I think that no matter what, you should have some sort of reel because everybody is looking for that. Everyone wants to know a little bit more about you and your acting. And even if it's taking clips of things that you have, that you've done theatrically as opposed to on camera, yes. Or if there are portions of a class that you've taken that have been put on tape that have a really good monologue on it, that 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 can be a showcase piece for you, then by all means, create that. I think that you also have to have a resume that reads correctly.
Mhm.
And I think that you have to kind of find either a mentor or somebody that knows more than you. And and again, people get very scared about that. There's something very vulnerable about either asking for help or an opinion.
Yeah.
And And so, but the resume is the thing.
Yeah.
You and I are constantly looking at resumes. You and I are constantly saying, oh, what's their special skills? Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love special skills. And
Me
so,
too.
so so because you can really pull interesting character choices from a special skill,
Mhm.
especially accents and dialects. And so,
And we're all, you never know what we're looking for, and we never know what we're going to need. So your
ah,
special skills are always really important to us.
yes, one of my favorite stories is when I was at TheaterWorks. There was this young man who walked in on a special skill. He said he could do a little boy in a jar locked in a closet. I had no idea what that meant, but this guy puffs up his cheeks and he says, Daddy, Daddy, I'm in the closet, help me. And it was hilarious. He got the job because he was so funny that he could have read the phone book and we would have been like, yes. And so, like,
His
it's
personality seemed not to come through, right?
yes,
Isn't that,
yes.
but that's important too, making sure that a little bit of your personality shines through
Yeah.
everything.
So, I mean, so really, it's ask for help when you need a resume. That's just to get back to the question. Put a reel together, however rough it may be, because you know that you'll always improve upon it. That's the great thing. And so, and people kind of wax and wane whether they should or should not have a website. I say yes, because again, our job is trying to know you, all of you. And so give us some images, give us a bio, give
Mhm.
us, because we're not always in an audition room with you, give us what we need so we can start to get to know you.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Now, let me ask you, because you're talking about reels and stuff, and that brings me to my next question. What advice would you give actors when it comes to networking? Like, how do you like to be contacted? Do you like to be contacted? What gets your attention? Like, what's is a realistic way an actor could begin to start to make connections in the industry? Because that's another important part of it.
Yes. So I, okay. I think that it's always full. You know how people will say, "Oh, I never remember names."
Yeah.
And it's like, "Wait, but why should I remember your name if you don't remember my name?"
Mhm.
And so, with that said, I think that I never mind an email. Sometimes I respond, sometimes I don't, but also know who you are contacting because I get dear casting. And don't you hate dear casting
My God,
or
I like that.
or if people don't know your gender or etc.
Or
And
they
so
don't know what you really do, and they're like, I'm looking for representation. I'm like,
yes,
you should
and
call an
so
agent, not a casting director. Do your research before you email me.
yes, so I think that an email is fine, but know whom you're emailing.
Make it
And
specific, right?
yes, exactly. Treat each email that you send out like you are really trying to invest in the relationship, and
Yeah.
that's important. Now, part of that investment, again, going back to social media, I think that to get a message on Instagram is fine, but to do business on Instagram is another story.
Mhm.
And so I don't like to do business on Instagram, though once I know somebody, I will absolutely follow them back because now we have a relationship. And
Right.
again, this is a relationship-based business. Now, for some people who are, in the millions with their followers, I understand they're not doing that with everybody. But for me, that's what I like. I like that personal, like we're now going to kind of have that exchange of thoughts and ideas. And so I think that you also have to be very, I think that in terms of Facebook, a lot of us casting directors have our business Facebook page and our personal Facebook. Be conscientious of that, be conscientious that we have a work life and a home life. And so, and that's why we have that business page set up. And you can absolutely ask questions on that business page, which is why it's there.
Mhm.
And so there's that. I think that we still have these actors connection type of things.
Yeah.
And I think that when you have the opportunity, research whom you really want to meet. Because again, why take a class with just anybody? Make it someone special that you feel like you can really have a connection to. And I think that when there are these opportunities to meet X, Y, and Z, it's up to you to do follow up and say, and say, just like when we're at the end of an audition and we say thank you, and hopefully everyone says thank you also say thank you because people have given of their time, energy, and efforts. And then we say thank you back by coming to our class, etc. It just nice goes a long way with these schmoozy things. And I don't hear of too many things that are like online schmoozy things.
Mhm.
I think that during COVID we had that aplenty, and so now I think we're
But
we're
it's
kind of
great though. You say all the things that am constantly trying to
yeah.
instill in some of the upcoming talent coming up today too. I think that is really great, especially just knowing who you're reaching out to and doing your research. And I love the thing that you said about if you're going to take an acting class with somebody in the industry, make sure it's specific, right? Do your research. Oh, I've been researching this casting director. Now they're doing something in Actors Access or whatever. I mean, or Actors Connection. I want to make now that's the money I want to spend.
Yes, and when people know what you've worked on and they know parts of your resume, or pe people, whether it's a director or an actor that you've worked with that you have a mutual connection to,
Mhm.
then by all means, and you can even say, "Hey, you worked with, I'm taking this class with, let's say to me, I'm taking this class with Robin, and you've worked with her, right? What was she like? Like, what was she like in the audition room? What are things you know about her that I can kind of bring into the relationship?" So, and I think that you have to do your research. I think that, for our colleagues, there are people who are bakers, and there are people who are into genealogy, and whenever you bring those very specific likes into the conversation, it makes the person feel good. Just like we are trying to know the actors once they're in the room, and you're very much, the actor, are very much trying to know us. And and look, and it's a process. Rome was not built in a day, and it wasn't taken down in a day. But 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 let it flow naturally. So
Yeah, I love that. Boy, you give good chat. Now we're down to the rapid fire questions where I just ask you a couple of extra questions real quick.
okay.
But one thing that I did want to get out there, because I loved everything that you said about how you got into casting. What
Yes.
advice would you give an upcoming casting director out there?
Oh goodness. Connect with the world. Uh, you never know who knows who.
Yeah.
Uh, I would also say remember not to overstep, because we all tread very carefully on we all tread very carefully. It's connect, but don't overstep,
Right.
And I think that to have that wonderful balance is a thing. Remember that when you're putting together a resume, people want to see that you've actually done things that are related to casting, that you know how to deal with talent, that you know how to organize
Mhm.
and keep things together. And people forget that all of those very office type things are things that we are doing day to day, every day. They're the boring things. I think
Organizational skills are like a key
yeah,
to the casting director's life.
such a key. And for us, I'll call it the passing paperwork kinds of things. It's boring, but it's part of the job, and not everything is going to be glamorous. And when we're in the thick of everything, and let's say we've lost talent, the idea that you can keep your calm. And I think also for those that are up and coming in the business, you forget that you can make a mistake, brush yourself back, brush your knees off, and then get right back up. I think
Yeah,
people,
like, oh, I made a mistake. What did I learn from this mistake? Oh, that's what I learned. Now I'll never do it again. Okay,
yes,
let's keep moving.
yes, I think people think that the minute they make a mistake, they're done.
Yeah.
And that's terrible. And that's actors, casting directors, it's not,
Producers, directors, they all make
yes,
mistakes.
yes.
I
And,
gave you
and
the wrong name.
yes. So,
Oh, now, what if here's a quick question about because you coming from a theater background, so I know you guys do get some self-tapes, right?
yes, we do
So
a
what
lot.
If given the choice between 2 takes or 3 takes to submit, what is your preferred limit when you don't set a limit on how many takes you want?
Hmm, interesting question. Okay, I don't know. I think that similarly, whether it's theater, film, commercials, or television, okay. I know everyone wants to put out their best work, but here's the thing. Don't you think that by take two, you've take one is either your most perfect take, and then two is just giving it a zhuzh or giving it a different spin. Take one is like the oops, but let me
Right.
try one. And that way you can kind of see
Warm
everything.
up. It's the warm
Yeah,
up.
yes. But that take three, what's take three really going to do for you? So I would say give it 2 takes because we will love one of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes we will love both for very different reasons.
Mhm.
And so, but that take three thing, because you can keep going and going.
And you lose the sound, you lose the purpose, you lose your motivation, your voice. You're not sure what you're even doing anymore.
Yes. So I say two, two.
Yeah, me too. I like that too. Now, what should actors understand about their headshots and how we view them as part of and the part that they play in the casting process?
Well, they should look like you. I always say that they should have a little life behind the eyes. I I
Yes.
don't know about you. I get a lot of actors who will say, "Can you take a look at my headshots?"
Hmm.
When they've first got them taken. And it's sort of like, wait, remember what the roles are that you can play.
Right.
And
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 the
if you
roles that you want to play, the type of things that you're going to try and seek out as an actor.
yes, and I recently had a young woman reach out to me whom I know
Mhm.
and said, "Robin, what can I play?" I said, "No, no, no. That's a question for you.
Good.
What do you play? What can you play? What do you want to play?" So So she said, "Well, I get a lot of, you know, I get a lot of nice girl roles." I said, "Okay, fine. Nothing wrong with a girl next door." She said, "But if I put a little lipstick on, I'm vampy." And I said, "Good. So let's have some headshots that reflect a little bit of edge and,
Hmm.
kind of have a sexy vibe to it. So you know, that way, it's you can have one that reflects both of those types of things that you can really, really play." And that's fine. And so I think that it really look, and some actors like to take like wackadoo headshots where like it's the whole body. And yeah, and a lot of like, yes, like Vogue,
Can
no.
I see your face, please? That's what I'm trying to hire.
Exactly. Or like so much background. Like if there's too many trees or a circus in the background, don't circus us.
I always say your headshot it's all about you. It's the one time you can be a narcissist and make everything about you. You should be the whole focal point. When I look at the picture, I should only want to look at you. Not, oh, what's that tree doing back there?
Yes. And in terms of like too much, like don't do too much face, don't do too much jewelry, don't do
Glamour
too
shot.
Mhm.
Don't give me
Like
glamour shots.
no glamour shots that died in like the early 90s.
Okay.
Stop.
This was
Mhm.
so great talking to you. I can't tell you how happy I am to have you as a guest. And my last and final question for you is, what was the last film, show, TV, or theater or performance that you saw that you really enjoyed?
Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. So that was the hardest question. So I see a lot of theater and so I just saw Maybe Happy Ending and
How
I
was that?
okay. It is quirky. It is so enjoyable. I saw it literally right before the election and
Oh, good.
I kind of thought it was a great show to at, for this past week. And so and interestingly too, the so very proudly I went to college with the lighting designer and the lighting was gorgeous. And so bravo Ben Stanton. And so yay. So and they had actual credits rolling at the end, almost like a film, which
Really?
Yes, which was really interesting, and I had not seen that in the theater.
I love that.
Yes,
That is awesome. That would make me just sit there and like, oh, now I can take it all in.
you do. And then I will say I also saw the concert at City Center of Ragtime,
Oh, wow,
and
you did?
that was mic drop. Yes, I before tickets went up to astronomical rates, I or prices. I went with a friend of mine and we were in the nosebleed section, loving every minute of it. And I think that it should move to Broadway, and that's that. So yeah, those were my two things. Those, and I loved it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Robin, so much for joining me today on this beautiful sunny day after a crazy week that we've had. It's been such a delight talking to you. Just tell everybody one more time about your casting office, what you cast, and if you want to share any type of contact information or
Sure.
not.
Yes. So Robin Carus casting, and Robin is spelled like Batman and Robin, and then Carus and casting. And I have a Facebook page that's Robin Carus casting. Um, my Instagram handle is at Robin Carus, RobinCarus, no dots or lines or anything.
Follow
And
you.
and I do check everything regularly, and I do answer emails. My email, I will give out my email. It's Robin Carus casting at Gmail. Um, I don't
That's
know.
great.
Yeah,
That's it. Right. You don't want to get bombarded now, Robin. Don't give them too much now.
well, yeah. And I work on, like I said earlier, theater and film, and every now and again a commercial or two. And whatever fun project somebody says, let's do this. And.
Robin, before I let you go, though, can I ask you just real quick, talk to some of the actors out there about maybe the importance of the commercial side of the industry and how it could really help them make connections and become better auditioners. If that's something that you think is a true factual statement.
I do. I think that these days, a lot of kids coming out of their acting programs, they concentrate so heavily on, I'm going to be in the theater, or I'm going to be on film and television, and that's it. But you forget that, think of commercials as a, whether it's voiceovers or on camera, as a vehicle for the larger things. And also the thing is that the same casting offices that are working on film and television and Broadway or off Broadway, they are also working on commercials. And they need your voice, and they need your look, and they need your skills. And there's no shame. And as you your years in the business increase, then you can be one of those people that say, okay, so I can now have a little money sign next to my name when the agent submits me and says, that I'm above scale.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And above scale meaning that it's that you are a little bit more, for the, you get more for the price, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah, yeah.
And so and I'm saying that not to you, but to
Yeah.
everybody listening. And so, but I but I think
It's also
that,
a great way to make connections too with
so
industry professional. How else are you going to get
and
to be the casting director if you don't audition for them?
these days, so many commercial directors and producers also work on film, and that's a really important thing because they're working on a whole slew of material, and you want to be part of that, and you want to be the person that is on set, and then they bring you back for a film. You have to remember that you're not simply just one thing. You're an actor, which means you're malleable, and you should be. And the idea that, why wouldn't you make money off of your voice? And if you're a bilingual actor, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
the idea that you can actually do work both on camera, theater, and voiceover work in whatever your native tongue is, or tongue you grew up with, and English. Brilliant. And I think that too, and you didn't ask me about this, but the idea of, let's say you're somebody who has an accent, be it a regional or be it a region of a country that is not here. Uh, I think that there's beauty in that, and that you can't look at it as something that's a strike against you. We may ask how neutral your tone can sound in an audition, but it doesn't mean that we don't like what we're hearing. We're just curious how you play and how you modulate the sound, really. And people think of that as something like, oh my God, I have to work on that. No.
I always tell actors if you have an accent, that's something that's making you unique in a way. Find a way to make it work for you and your
Yes.
right? And also think about this when it comes to commercials. Think about all the Patty Jenkins, think about all the David Finchers, all the Ridley Scotts, and all the Spike Lees who all did commercials, and then
Mhm.
they stepped into their major film, projects and might have been like, remember all those great people that I worked with on my way up on those small projects? I need some of them in this film or TV pilot or whatever, you know?
And and in the and in the years before COVID, and people had offices, how many times would you go in to a commercial casting office or an office that did commercials, and you would see a room filled with, yes, the commercial actors that really did this on a day to day. And you'd also see, mix into the bunch a slew of Broadway people who also did this, and that was their bread and butter while they were waiting for the next show or in between projects, or even while a project was happening. And so the
Film
idea that,
and theater actors too coming in. Oh, I'm in this show right now, but I'm auditioning for this voiceover real quick to make some
yeah,
passage change for myself.
exactly. And there, we should I think that though casting directors all have their specialty, right? If somebody came to you with a project that was so interesting that you couldn't say no, you wouldn't say no. And the same for actors. If somebody came to you with a project that you couldn't say no, you're never going to say, ew, a national network commercial. Ew. You're not going to do that. And just like you're not going to say, oh my gosh, a lead in a feature film. No,
Exactly.
it's ridiculous.
Robin, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your wonderful advice. Everybody, please enjoy all of Robin's great advice. Good luck on your journeys. I hope you found her and a little bit of my advice helpful as you go forward. And guess what, everybody? I'll see you next time on another episode of Casting Directors Say What. So thanks and have a good day, everybody. Bye. Thanks, Robin.